All right, what's up, everybody? So in this video, I'm going to be going through some of the files that I was able to found that I feel like are of some significance. It's mostly connecting more dots, exposing the mentality of the people involved, and more evidence that there are a bunch of illegal redactions. By now, most of you have probably seen the big stuff that has come out so far. I mean, who knows what's still buried in these 3 million files? But you've likely seen that, Donald Trump might have been measuring the genitals of young women with his hands. Elon Musk was asking to go to a party on Jeffrey Epstein's island. He actually ended up going to that party, and he wanted to be there on, quote, the wildest night, unquote, which that's a little weird in whatever that was, 2013, where that took place, 5 years after Jeffrey Epstein was outed as a pedophile by the justice system. And then, of course, we've seen the email that Epstein sent to himself regarding Bill Gates, and I guess Bill Gates wanted to supposedly slip his wife some antibiotics because he caught an STD from a Russian girl that he had an affair with. So pretty disgusting stuff so far, but you've probably seen a lot of that. We're going to be going over some of the more peripheral stuff here and filling in the blanks. So we're going to start with this guy right here. This is an email between Leslie Groff, who is one of Ghislaine Maxwell's lieutenants, or Jeffrey's right-hand woman, someone that did a lot of scheduling for him, and she's emailing this guy named Mark Middleton. Mark Middleton, of course, is the liaison that served Bill Clinton back in the 90s, setting up meetings between Clinton and Epstein for that entire period of time. And what's interesting about this email is that it's dated 2013. And I was under the impression that Mark Middleton was off in Arkansas, or back in Arkansas, working for Middleton Inc., which you can see here. That's his family's company. And that was like 20, almost 30 years that he had been out of Epstein's orbit with Bill Clinton. And now we see here in 2013, he's actually trying to get back in touch with Epstein. And Epstein says, yes, give him my contact information. So at some point in 2013, Mark Middleton re-establishes contact with Jeffrey Epstein. And I didn't conclude them here, but there are more emails in 2009, 4 years prior to this, where I think it was similar stuff. Mark Middleton was trying to establish contact once again, but in this case, we actually see Epstein say, yes, go ahead and give him my contact information. So I just thought that was interesting. For those of you who know more about the Epstein story, this is much later on than I thought this guy ever really had contact with Epstein or even Bill Clinton. He worked for Bill Clinton, but he had gone back to Arkansas a long time ago when this was sent. So very interesting to see this. Now we have this email. I thought this was interesting. It just says, for your information, Sarah will arrive 7:20 a.m. into St. Thomas. Tomorrow, Leon will pick her up and will arrange a boat to bring her to Little St. James Island. Of course, I thought this was interesting because we have Leon here. We also have Sarah. So it could be Sarah Vickers, Sarah Kellen, could be Leon Black. We're not really sure here, but these are very familiar names in the story. Leon, of course, if this is Leon Black, why is he arranging for a boat to pick up some girl named Sarah, might be Sarah Vickers, and bring her to Little St. James Island? That would be really weird. So if you're looking through these files and you see anything else that might pertain to this, go ahead and leave a comment on this video and we can try to connect some more of the dots. Okay, let's move on to the next one though. We have this email here. Now, this is an email chain that started with a guy named Jacob Frankel. And what you need to know about this is that somehow Jeffrey Epstein was able to set up a meeting between Benjamin Netanyahu, the current prime minister of Israel, and Jess Staley. And now what we see is that this guy, Jacob Frankel, is affirming that that meeting did happen and that this guy, Jacob, was there. Jacob sent this photo that the government went ahead and redacted and removed so that we can't see it, of Jess Staley, him, and Benjamin Netanyahu taking a selfie together or just taking a picture together, which then Jess Staley forwarded to Jeffrey Epstein as, I guess, some gesture of gratitude or something like, hey, I remember what you did for me, whatever he says here. I hope the ranch is fun, great weather, basically brown-nosing, sucking Epstein's dick a little bit over email. But this is like, what is going on here? I don't know why they keep removing all these pictures. Like, I want to see this stuff. This photo is supposedly Jess Staley with Benjamin Netanyahu. And Jess Staley, of course, was a pedophile. And he did all kinds of stuff and screwed Epstein's assistants and apparently watched some of the abuse taking place at one of Epstein's properties, and was a frequent member of the Little St. James Island Club. He would be there all the time in the jacuzzi, sending text messages to Epstein while Epstein was incarcerated. Just a really fucked up guy. And of course, they're not going to let us see the image of these two shoulder to shoulder in an image. And then it raises the question too, why did Jeffrey Epstein have this kind of pull with Benjamin Netanyahu? And this is back in 2014, before Netanyahu was even a prime minister. Very interesting stuff. You know, it's like this group of people have all become more and more relevant as time goes on. The people that we are specifically seeing in these files. Of course, a lot of people are named, but the same names that keep coming up in these files, they have become more relevant in the last 15 years as a group, as a collective. It's weird to see, and it's weird to see that Netanyahu is meeting with somebody who was referred to him by a known pedophile, because when this meeting was actually set up, this is a reference back to that meeting, of course, in 2014, but Epstein had set this meeting up after he was convicted of child prostitution. So you've got Benjamin Netanyahu saying, hey, there's this guy over in America, he wants me to meet with one of his pedophile buddies. Oh yeah, and he's a pedophile too. That's fine. Let's go ahead and have a meeting, and let's throw this guy Jacob Frankel in there as well. I'll just meet with the both of them and we can take a picture. And then the government's like, let's go ahead and redact that. So thought that was interesting. Thought everybody should know that, Benjamin Netanyahu now knows two pedophiles. So let's move on here. We have a email between Jeffrey Epstein and Larry Summers, where Jeffrey Epstein is saying, some lady named Ariane will bring her daughters. And then he lists what I'm presuming to be the ages of her daughters. I don't know who Ariane is, but I'm wondering, why does Epstein think that Larry Summers wants to know the ages, the underage ages of this woman's daughters? We already know that Larry Summers was sending a bunch of very creepy emails. We found that out last year when they released a bunch of emails from Jeffrey Epstein, where Larry Summers was basically saying, give me advice on how to doom this woman that I am mentoring at Harvard, this woman that sees me as a mentor figure for the subject of economics or whatever Larry Summers was teaching. Let me abuse my position and help me abuse my position to doom her into having a sexually charged or romantic relationship with me, while also, by the way, being married, because Larry Summers has been married for decades, and this was well into that. And of course, Larry Summers' wife was also emailing Epstein about a book called Lolita, in which an older man marries a woman to get access to her 12-year-old daughter, then kills the mother, and then acts like a huge creep and basically becomes that 12-year-old girl's legal guardian. And Larry Summers' wife is emailing this known pedophile about this book in particular, talking about how great it is. So just thought I'd bring up all of that again, and we have more evidence of just creepy shit. Creepy stuff where Epstein's like, hey, guess what? Ariane's bringing her daughters. They're 16, they're 14, and they're 13 years old. Isn't that great? Isn't that great, Larry Summers? Isn't that really interesting to you? We can do something with that? I mean, come on, what the fuck is this shit, dude? Moving on to the next one. Here we see an email chain between a woman named Nicole Junkerman, Jeffrey Epstein, and Ehud Barak. Now, these three went in on an investment together into a company called Reporty. Reporty later became a company called Carbine, and I believe Carbine, with an office in New York, just 2 miles away from Jeffrey Epstein's house, was helping Epstein set up his blackmail harvesting system that they found at his house. They found, USB drives, all kinds of computers, recording devices. They found network video recorders, digital video recorders, server boxes, cloud keys, LTO Generation 6 backup tape drives, all kinds of stuff. And of course, Carbine basically does something similar. They take sensory data from around a city or urban area and they upload that to 911. It's all packaged, it's all organized, it's all perfectly processed for the logistical procedures that 911 responders need to go through so that they can operate efficiently with accurate information. But here we see this woman, Nicole Junkerman, is saying, Cyprus is raising eyebrows, so I would propose Luxembourg. And what are they talking about? Well, apparently the founder of Reporty at this time, his name is Amir, wanted to use Cyprus as a tax haven, or rather to evade taxes. And this woman is saying, Cyprus is raising eyebrows, so I propose Luxembourg. Well, Epstein gives us a little bit of insight into the mentality going into this decision, where he says, I agree. The Israeli trick of using Cyprus to avoid taxes is silly, antiquated, and dangerous. Why is it dangerous? Because it's fucking illegal. You can get hit with all kinds of fees, fines, maybe even prison time. And I think it's really funny that he calls it the Israeli trick of using Cyprus. Like this is something that happens all the time. Like this is something that people know about, that people higher up in maybe Israeli society just do on the regular so that they can avoid paying taxes. And why I say that is because of what Ehud Barak says. Ehud Barak replies and says, I ordered AE to stop all steps for the Cyrus Company and be ready to change for a real European jurisdiction. So Ehud Barak, the former prime minister of Israel, he was prime minister, I think, back in 2000, somewhere around there, and former chief of defense for the country of Israel, a very high up figure, the highest up figure, is going along with this plan set forth by Nicole Junkerman and Jeffrey Epstein to evade taxation by using what Ehud Barak refers to as a real European jurisdiction, aka Luxembourg, to evade taxes, which is illegal. So those of you in Israel, maybe take a look at this. It looks like Ehud Barak has been cheating you out of your taxes. Even though, your society, your country set him up pretty well, he actually invested millions into this company. He's now the chairman of it, making tons of money, and it looks like he's not paying his taxes. And I really wonder if the same might be true for Benjamin Netanyahu, given that he was looking at having charges brought against him for financial crimes prior to the war, which started on October 7th. And also because Benjamin Netanyahu appears to have known Jeffrey Epstein and was willing to meet with Jess Staley, two giant, degenerate, criminal pedophiles. And only God knows what Benjamin Netanyahu was talking about with Jess Staley in that meeting, and only God knows why Benjamin Netanyahu respected Epstein, a known pedophile at the time, enough to set up a meeting with one of his pedophile buddies. So in the beginning of this video, if you remember, I said we're going to be exposing the mentalities of some of these people, and we're starting to see it. They are horrible people. Right here, they're looking at evading taxes. And what's funny to me too is that we know Benjamin Netanyahu was actually very critical of Ehud Barak and was criticizing Ehud Barak for knowing Jeffrey Epstein. Well, it looks like Benjamin Netanyahu also knew Epstein. And I just think that's so funny. Like, that's the third time somebody else who was involved in Epstein's network says, oh, look at them. They're involved with Epstein. And then we find out they're also involved. It just happened with Elon Musk. Remember when Elon Musk said that, oh, Donald Trump doesn't want to release the Epstein files because he's in them. Have a nice day, Donald Trump. Well, we just found out that he was going to his parties. He wanted the wildest night. Elon, what the fuck, bro? And then, all the way back in 2016, at the CPAC conference, Donald Trump, right as he's coming onto the political stage, the world stage, out from being a businessman, remember he was dropping hints about Epstein's Island? He talked about Bill Clinton having big problems soon and Prince Andrew having problems soon with the infamous Jeffrey Epstein's Island. It's just so funny because I feel like these people hate each other and they're willing to throw each other under the bus and criticize each other for all the same shit that they do. It's like, holy shit, man, these are the people who are actually running the world and they're behaving like a bunch of fucking high schoolers. The hypocrisy is insane just amongst each other. But of course, they're all going to band together on this issue of Jeffrey Epstein because they're all involved. And at the end of the day, it's really them versus us. They might all hate each other, just like a band of villains operating under Lex fucking Luthor or some shit. But we are a bigger threat to them than they are to each other. So I just thought I'd go on that little rant tangent there for a minute because yes, these people are horrible. And this file release is starting to reveal just how willing they are to engage in illegal behavior. But let's move on here. I thought this email from Ehud Barak to Jeffrey Epstein was also really interesting because he says, dramatic developments in your elections make everything possible. And when I read that, I was thinking, like, what the fuck does that mean? And then I looked at the date, which is November 1st, 2016. This is when Trump was up and coming. This is right before he got elected, like 2 or 3 months later. So something about Donald Trump doing well in the polls and looking like a serious political candidate, I believe, had Ehud Barak say this. He said, dramatic developments in your elections make everything possible. Why? Is it because Jeffrey Epstein, even in 2016, was in tight with Donald Trump? Is that why? Could that possibly be it? Because that's the only thing I can think of. That's the only reason I could come up with for him to say this. Why do the dramatic developments, and think about Donald Trump as a candidate, that was pretty dramatic. So I'm pretty sure he was referring to Donald Trump's success with his campaign here in this email. And he's saying that it's going to make everything possible. And of course, for context, this is about reporting. the company that they were creating, which now has an office in New York. So something about Donald Trump, I believe, getting some success with his campaign was making everything possible. Just thought I'd include that, just thought I'd add that in there. Because it really makes me believe that even as late as 2016, which according to Trump, he didn't talk to Epstein for much longer than that, but more and more we're starting to find out that he actually did. But here we're seeing potentially, yes, Epstein did stay in contact and did have pull with Donald Trump even as late as November 1st, 2016. All right, we're moving on. Now, this is a very interesting email. This is from a company called Jawbone Health. And this company is offering Jeffrey Epstein a position as senior advisor to the company, which is a pretty high up role. But what's interesting about this is look at this. These are the people on the board of this company. You have all of these leaders in the Middle East. I mean, this guy right here, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, this guy is vice president and prime minister of the United Arab Emirates. Then we look at this guy, Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. That guy is the crown prince of Dubai. Then we take a look at this guy, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. This guy is the president of the United Arab Emirates. And then of course we have this guy who probably doesn't need much introduction at this point. We have Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. And it's just very interesting because we have this group of very high up Middle Eastern leaders in what looks like two countries all coming together, and they're bringing Epstein in on this company that they've all invested in. And it makes you wonder, what did Epstein trade for this honor? To be made the, senior advisor to this company, where they want him to basically assist the company with entering new geographic markets. That's his main role, okay? And of course, additional help. But how is a guy like Epstein? We all know Epstein wasn't a serious businessman. He wasn't a hedge fund manager. He didn't really have a legitimate network of people. He never served in office. How is it that these very important Middle Eastern leaders who have a vested interest in this technology company are trusting someone like Epstein, a degenerate, known pedophile, scam artist fraud, to assist the company with entering new geographic markets? Is it because Epstein had a shit ton of blackmail? And is it because we know he was using that blackmail? I just made a video about this. Epstein would use all this blackmail material to smooth over all these deals. Well, apparently, all of these motherfuckers right here thought Epstein had exactly what it took. They saw something that made them say, hey, you know what? This guy can get it done. And I really wonder if part of that might have been Epstein showing these guys, look what I've got over these other people. I have these people on their knees. I can tell them to do whatever you want me to tell them to do. That's what I think. Because if I owned a company and I was a leader of a country, right? I would not even consider using somebody like Jeffrey Epstein, who at this time is a known pedophile and scam artist, in any part of any company that I ever owned. But something made these guys say, yes, Jeffrey Epstein can get it done. He doesn't have a portfolio. He doesn't have a record of success with negotiating business in legitimate ways. But potentially he's got a wild card up his sleeve that will work. And so we're going to bring him on board as the senior advisor. That's what I see here. I think it's very interesting. And it's more evidence to me that Epstein did have compromising blackmail material on a lot of very powerful people in the government. Because this is all they want him to do. Assist the company with entering new geographic markets. Which could include the UK, of course, too. You think about Jeffrey Epstein hitting up the royal family and he's like, hey, help me get this company inside your country and help me operate it, or I'll release a whole bunch of horrible video that I collected at my townhouse when your boy Prince Andrew visited, and everyone will know that he's a pedophile. That's what I see here. That's what I see. I see these guys knowing that Epstein can compel people to do what they want through blackmail. Okay? But we're going to move on now. Here we have a text message chat between Jeffrey Epstein, who's this guy here, the orange on the right, and Steve Bannon. And in the same vein of Middle Eastern connections, I thought it was very interesting that Epstein was talking about this to Steve Bannon. Epstein says, when I mentioned Summers' name to Mohammed bin Salman, which is what MBS stands for, as an alternative to me, his face scrunched as if someone farted. So Epstein's basically making a joke here. But you think about this conversation where this guy, Steve Bannon, who at this time, let's see, when was this? This was 2018. had some context as to Epstein's business dealings with this guy, Mohammed bin Salman. Now, it's interesting to me because Trump in 2019 went against all advice, all counsel, and decided to continue funding Saudi Arabia's war against the Houthi rebels in Yemen. This is a war that we shouldn't have been funding. It was killing so many people. I think it still might even be going on. I need to check. But Donald Trump decided to keep funding this war against all advice, even the advice of people in his own administration. And now we see Epstein is talking to Steve Bannon about Mohammed bin Salman. And of course, as you know, we recently had Mohammed bin Salman and Trump meet in the White House. He basically had the red carpet fucking rolled out for him like an honorable guest. This guy, the same guy, which if you don't know, Mohammed bin Salman, every intelligence agency out there knows that he killed that journalist, Khashoggi, the one guy that went to Turkey, tried to get a marriage license, ended up getting assassinated by like 20 guys that were sent by Mohammed bin Salman. They cut him up into pieces. They wheeled him out in suitcases. Totally fucked up shit. Totally like the antithesis of free speech because that guy was a journalist. And now we see that Epstein is highly involved with Mohammed bin Salman as well. And he's talking to Steve Bannon about him, obviously because Steve Bannon has some context as to the relationship between Mohammed bin Salman and Jeffrey Epstein. So in my mind, we are really connecting some dots here. The full picture is not clear, but that's what this says to me. This says to me that basically the favoritism that we are showing to Saudi Arabia and to Mohammed bin Salman from Trump and his administration also potentially has an Epstein component to it as well, which is never a good thing. But let's move on here to the next document. Here we see a guy named Boris Nikolic emailing Epstein. And Boris Nikolic was a guy who was working for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He was actually one of Bill Gates' employees and would go with Bill Gates to Epstein's townhouse in New York for business meetings, as far as we know. But if we scroll down here too, I am assuming, because this email address starts with a B, I don't know why this is blacked out. I'm assuming this is Boris Nikolic that he is replying to. He says, Sheikh Mohammed bin Salman, right, like the fish, can't fucking spell, Sep Crown Prince Saudi, okay? Not really sure what he's saying, but it's now correspondence. Now we're bringing Bill fucking Gates into this Mohammed bin Salman situation, and it's just starting to tie a lot of dots together for me. It's telling me that this is going really, really far and wide now. I will admit, this point is a little bit out there. There's really not much to tie it to, but I find it so interesting because here's the next one too. We have this guy named Jabber Y, who I've not been able to find any information on, also emailing Jeffrey Epstein about the Jamal Khashoggi killing, the one I just told you about. The one that involved Mohammed bin Salman. He sent a bunch of assassins after this guy and killed him. He's now emailing this guy about it as well. So we see more correspondence, more people who are potentially involved in something regarding Epstein and Mohammed bin Salman. But that's not all. We have one more from Catherine Rumler, who was a fixer for Obama and who is now a lawyer at Goldman Sachs. She's actually a partner there. She entered as a partner so that she could use her inroads with the fucking federal government to smooth over a bunch of bullshit that they were conducting in other countries. But now we see that Catherine Rumler is also texting Epstein about Mohammed bin Salman. So I really want to know, because the whole Saudi Arabia thing in the Epstein story has been completely downplayed. The FBI found a passport with ingress and egress stamps from the Middle East in a safe on Little St. James Island when they did their search. And for a while there, they tried to say that it was a fake passport for some reason, like they were covering something up. And now we are seeing a whole cluster of activity between Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Mohammed bin Salman with Jeffrey Epstein. And I think that's really fucking interesting because Mohammed bin Salman, of course, is also somebody who is not afraid of killing people, of doing terrible things and then covering it up by murdering other people. So more dots are being connected here with all that, but that's about it for the Mohammed bin Salman and Saudi Arabia thing and the Middle East thing in general. We're going to be going in a different direction now with this next document. Here in this document, we see some friction that was occurring back in 2016 between Stephen Hoffenberg and Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I've researched the Epstein story extensively, and Hoffenberg has said some very interesting things about Jeffrey Epstein. He said that he was basically his uncharged co-conspirator. He says he had major traction with the Department of Justice. And he said that Epstein would often brag about passing secrets about people like Prince Andrew onto intelligence agencies like Mossad. Yes, he actually made that claim. And I had the suspicion that Hoffenberg, who died actually, nobody knows how he died. They found him dead in his house. And believe it or not, one of Epstein's victims had actually become like family to him. They called in a welfare check for Hoffenberg and they found him dead in his house and declared it, I think it was like COVID or something, like natural causes without actually a cause. Super weird, but so are all the deaths in the Epstein story. But I suspected that there was some friction there between these two due to their history. And in the next few documents, I'll show you just how much friction there actually was. But in this one, what's interesting is we actually see that Stephen Hoffenberg was talking to people and working with the government to sue Jeffrey Epstein for damages that resulted from the Tower Financial Corporation Ponzi scheme that they were both a part of back in the 90s that ripped off $450 million from their investors. This document says this here. It is Mr. Hoffenberg's position that Mr. Epstein's fraudulent actions and engagement in the TFC Ponzi fraud with Mr. Hoffenberg and Tower Financial Corporation resulted in over 200,000 victims and damages of over $1 billion directly or indirectly from the purchase of fraudulent securities consisting of promissory notes and bonds from the Tower Financial Corporation, the TFC victims, and from Mr. Epstein's original and subsequent actions. So we see that yes, Hoffenberg is helping the government or helping a private entity here go after Jeffrey Epstein, and they're claiming damages of up to $1 billion. And this is all happening in 2016. And of course, $1 billion, that is huge. For a guy like Epstein, that would wipe him out. Because if you don't know, there was really no proof that Epstein was actually a billionaire. Everything points to him having somewhere between $650 to $700 million. So this is something that would have completely wiped him out. But now let's go to the next document because it actually gets kind of funny here. Epstein is emailing a whole bunch of people, likely relevant to his New York location. And one of those people is Leslie Groff, who is his assistant. And he's saying, there is a crazy guy called Stephen Hoffenberg who is stalking me. Please be careful if a guy starts trying to talk to you outside the house. Which is really funny because at this point in 2014, I think Stephen Hoffenberg would have been like 72 or something. So like the 72-year-old is someone to be afraid of. And in the next document, it gets even funnier because now he's emailing a security company. And he says, I have a wacko, names Stephen Hoffenberg stalking me. Do you have a security guy armed that I can hire for a few days? And of course, he says, you call Richie, he can get you an overnight guy. So at this point, for whatever reason, Jeffrey Epstein is like deathly afraid of this 70-something-year-old man that he thinks is stalking him. And I found some other correspondence between Stephen Hoffenberg and the lawyers that Jeffrey Epstein had for decades. One of the guys' name was, I think, Darren Indyke. And his attorney, Darren Indyke, was basically saying like, yeah, he called me and I hung up on him. So something was definitely going down between Stephen Hoffenberg and Jeffrey Epstein between 2014, I guess, and 2016. And I will say that yes, Stephen Hoffenberg, aside from being burned and basically left to take the full brunt of the fall with the Tower Financial Corporation Ponzi scheme, he also had established quite a strong relationship with at least two of Epstein's victims. So maybe Stephen Hoffenberg felt bad for them as well and just hated Epstein. But it's also important to realize that most of what Hoffenberg said, most of his comments came from just after the SEC came in and wrecked the whole Ponzi scheme thing and sent Hoffenberg and everybody else except for Epstein to prison. So this further affirms to me that after that point, Stephen Hoffenberg didn't really like Epstein all that much and probably saw him as at least partly responsible for putting him in prison and started telling everybody everything that he knew, including the brags by Epstein that he was passing information on to Mossad. So I just thought that I would share this with you as well because that's a new development in that section of the Epstein story. But now we're going to move on to something else here with this next document. I basically want to end the video by showing you guys that they are continuing to redact names that they shouldn't be, and they are protecting people's reputation. The Epstein Files Transparency Act that has forced all of this to come out mandates that no names can be redacted or otherwise hidden based on the embarrassing nature of the material that they are represented in or any other reason other than there being an active investigation into that person or that person being a victim. But here we have basically a perfect example of something just being embarrassing and them hiding the person who sent this email to Jeffrey Epstein. So I'll go ahead and I'll read part of this email for you. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this was sent from somebody whose name is being hidden. He says, yo, Jay, which I assume means yo, Jeffrey. So are we going to get together? And then, of course, they redact his name again, and they redact his cell number. All right, now let's take a look at this and see why this is such an embarrassing email to where they might be redacting somebody's name to provide them with some protection. Well, basically, whoever this is sent Epstein this long joke about a birthday clown who showed up to a kid's birthday party talking about his cock. The clown says that he's got something behind his back or whatever, and the kids are guessing what it is, and the clown says, it's my cock. And then somebody in the joke, I guess, says, you better stop that or I'll call the police. Now get back in there and entertain these kids. And what does the clown do? Well, he just says it again. He's like, you better call the cops. It's my cock again. In a different situation with different people, if somebody told me this and I knew they weren't a pedophile, this might be funny one time because it's just like some shock, lowbrow humor, and I kind of find that stuff funny. But this guy is emailing Jeffrey Epstein, right? The world's most notorious pedophile, a joke about a clown showing some kids his cock. And in the same line, he's like, yo, when are we going to get together, in the same instance where he's telling this joke? Almost like he's trying to rev Epstein up for this meeting that they're having with this joke about, basically borderline pedophilic behavior. Okay, so the main point here, though, is that yes, they are still protecting people. And I have another instance of that here, where we have some guy. I tried to find out who this was. I couldn't find out. If you know who this is, Ramsey Elkholi, if that's how it's pronounced. He is emailing Jeffrey Epstein, and the subject is Marta's kid. Not his, but someone named Marta's kid. And it's a picture of him with this kid in what appears to be like some kind of sauna, shower, something like that, like a custom-built bathroom of some kind. And he's holding this kid, which is presumably not his. And of course, they blurred his face out, which is illegal. They're not supposed to be redacting these just because they're embarrassing. I'm sorry, it's 2013. You know you're emailing a convicted pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein, with a child on your lap. Sorry, you don't get the privilege of being redacted. You don't get the privilege of protection. You knew it was stupid, you decided to do it anyway. But that's our government, everybody. They're protecting these people. They are protecting the people who are harming children. And that's why people are calling Donald Trump specifically, because he has probably the most power out of anybody to stop that and change what's going on and change the direction of this very Epstein cover-up and basically put a stop to it whenever he wants, and he's not. This guy right here is being protected, and I have a suspicion that images like this have some sinister nature to them just because of what we know about the Epstein case in general, which is basically what most people are suspecting at this point, especially because it's being covered up. And that's really the point in general that I want to hammer home. The cover-up is alive and well. We're seeing very weird behavior from all of these people. These files are exposing all kinds of stuff. Now we're seeing tax evasion, right? Like straight up, Prime Minister Ehud Barak, or at least the former prime minister, straight up going along with a plan to commit tax fraud, to commit tax evasion, even though he was the leader of that country and he likely got rich from the people's taxes over there in Israel. I think that's really fucked up. And we're also seeing a major cluster activity now around Mohammed bin Salman, a guy who has journalists murdered, and Jeffrey Epstein. And Jeffrey Epstein is talking to guys like Steve Bannon about it. So I'm just really starting to think that these people are in one big club, and all of them, interestingly enough, have become more relevant, more powerful, and honestly front of stage all in the last 15 years. And so I think the takeaway for this video is that you can rest assured that something very, very rotten is taking place here. Whether it just happened in the past and now we're seeing it, or if it's still going, which is my belief, is that it's still going on today, something absolutely is rotten here. And I think this picture is perfectly representative of that, because we have a random guy here with somebody else's kid, and his name and his face are fucking redacted, and that is illegal. It is illegal to be doing this. They are breaking the law to cover for these people. Why? Just ask yourself, why are they doing that? The evidence is right here, and that's where I will end the video. Thank you, have a good day, and I'll see you in the next one.